All right, looks like we've got everyone. So good evening, Commissioners Ching and Ostrowski. If we're ready to get started, I think we can.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
Let me just adjust the volume here just a little bit on my side so I can hear you. Okay, so the good news is tonight we just have a simple single item. It's just for a second story addition to an existing single family home. I'll go ahead and share the screen here for a moment. And really what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to be presenting from the agenda itself as opposed to going into the plans.
Yeah.
So yeah, the project is for a 285 square foot second story addition. It's up for a property located at 1789 Hearst Avenue. So this is almost at the edge of city limits. So almost immediately across the street from this property, going almost as far east as you can go in the city, is the city of San Jose. So when you're looking out from the front door of this home, you're looking at the next city over. And the reason why this item is being brought before the Site and Architecture Review Committee, unlike most properties and projects which we bring before you, which are subject to an area plan or zoning district, which requires Site and Architectural Review by default, most properties that are zoned R16 that are outside of these area plans aren't subject to any type of discretionary review. However, the R16 zoning ordinance provides provisions which allow for increases in Floria Ratio and a decrease in second story setbacks when the Planning Commission finds that there are circumstances which warrant a special adjustment. So a lot of the report, at least the beginning of the memo, I'm spending time just explaining what those findings are and possibly ways that those could be viewed as either being compliant or not compliant in this case. For instance, in regard to the request for a 5-foot second story setback where 10 feet would otherwise be required. In this case, it's talking about, is this going to be detrimental to the neighbor? Is really what this is getting at. Is it going to be disrupting the health, peace, comfort of a neighbor? And what the area that they're adding onto the home is really an expansion of an existing master bedroom. And in doing so, they're also removing a rear balcony. So the applicant actually picked up on this, or the architect in the written statement indicating that, you know, if anything, we might actually be improving, you know, the peace and enjoyment of these adjoining neighbors by removing this balcony feature. And that's just one of a number of considerations that could be taken into effect. The other findings aren't really as applicable. I mean, access to air and sunlight. I mean, the home is to the north, so the shade doesn't go quite in that direction. I don't know exactly circumstances where access to air might be disrupted, other than, I don't know, say you were smoking out on that balcony, which by the way, we're removing. So there aren't really a lot of grounds for that. I mean, there's plenty of airflow between these two buildings. I will note the home immediately to the south is a little bit closer to its relative side property line than it may be typical. So it is kind of, we're putting a tight second story setback against a tight 1-story setback of the home to the south, but it's still, you still have plenty of airflow. Okay, so in regard to Floria Ratio, really what we're looking for is this really going to fit in the neighborhood? That's really what we're trying to get at the end of the day. And if you're looking at homes up and down the block, there are a lot of homes with 2-story solid walls that extend from the ground floor all the way up to the second floor without a lot of interruption or break. And I think if you go around the street, there's a corner, I could pull up street view here in a minute. There are a number of properties that resemble this. And in fact, there's actually one just down the block, or just, I think, 2 homes to the left. It's the identical make and model of this home. Yeah. So the only difference, tangible difference between these 2 homes at the end of the day that you tell is that they filled in this little side pocket. You guys can see the mouse on the screen right now, is that correct? Yeah, that they filled in this little side pocket. It is recessed from the street. It's, I think it's 40+ feet back. It is behind the garage element, so it's not exactly the most visible element when looking at it from the street. So those are considerations as well. But that all said, this project is subject to design guidelines for single family homes. So in looking at there's a whole laundry list of items which you could be looked at, like privacy impacts. And I try to pull out two of the ones I felt were the most applicable to this project. And the first is, how does this integrate with the existing home? How does this addition, the materials, the siding, the color match? It's all going to match. So I felt as if that was something that was worth mentioning. They do have a couple of unique architectural elements they're adding that aren't found elsewhere in the home or in any other elevation. I actually think that was actively a result of a request of mine. They're trying to be responsive to one of my comments about the need for surface articulation, which is where they came up with this. But the more I looked at the project, it may or may not even be warranted. That said, the second one, and probably the most applicable and probably the most maybe in conflict policy, is this thing. We have a policy about adding surface articulation. They don't want you to have the guidelines. They pretty much say they don't want you to have a long, unarticulated solid roof mass. They don't want to have long or high unarticulated wall masses. So they're looking for ways to kind of add relief or add break. I don't know, given looking at the elevation, looking at the ground floor, this garage element is all continuous on the existing elevation. Here, if you're looking at my mouse. And the second floor, it's just matching that in parity. So you're maintaining that same kind of harmony in the facade and the elevation. But if you were looking at the design guidelines and you were trying to find a way to articulate it, it could be done. You would pretty much offset the second wall. That's going to cause disruption to the floor plan, but it could be done. And I'm also kind of playing with the windows here a little bit to kind of make that work. And then on the back, you could cantilever the home. You could cantilever that little addition where it would protrude out a little bit. And you have where in an area where you have a little bit more space. And you're also pulling in on the side. So you're looking at this home, really this is infilling that second story little pocket there. So the first story and the second story would line up. You could also offset that. So there's a little bit of a jut and you're kind of pushing it back a little bit. Maybe it's not the 5 feet they're asking for, but maybe it's 3 feet closer to the property line than the code would otherwise allow. So with that said, and I leave enough time for everybody else to talk, I just had raised a couple number of points here at the end. Just should a reduction in interior side setback be supported or increase in Floria ratio? Should the horizontal control joint and vertical trim be removed? That's that element I was mentioning earlier that's only really picked up on that one facade. And lastly, should the applicant consider offsetting the front or side elevation? And so in terms of meeting management, what I would propose is that I would suggest that the two SARC members speak first. Then we invite the applicant to kind of offer a little brief rebuttal, and then we can kind of close with the SARC.
Sounds good.
So Commissioner Ching or Ostrowski, if you want to talk and provide your feedback.
Yeah, I just have a general question first. What is generally the policy as far as asking for exceptions to the floor area ratio or lot coverage?
So there are, well, the code does provide findings, which are provided in the memo itself that say, what are the typical grounds? It's not a very common request. Most of the time, homeowners outside of an area plan, full well knowing that they can avoid a site and architectural review process by simply submitting plans which are in conformance, they don't go through this process. The last time we had a project come up where they were asking for an increase in floor area ratio was for a property at 447 Kings Court. And in that particular case, we looked at the neighborhood pattern a little bit more. How big was this home going to be relative to other homes in the area? And we found that that particular lot was one of the smaller lots on pretty much a cul-de-sac. So the other homes were to build up or to become larger, and they were to max out their floor area ratio. Even though this particular property was asking for an increase, the homes relative to it on that same cul-de-sac would have been larger anyways. So if we're trying to maintain neighborhood compatibilities, which is really what those findings are speaking to, that's one way about doing it. If you look at this lot too, I had a portion I was thinking about adding to the report. The lots immediately to the north are deeper and longer than this particular property. And so those homes that could be built to the north could be built larger by default without going through this process. Now, each property should be responsive to its individual net lot size, and that's a different way of looking at it. So that's really it in a nutshell.
Okay, hold on, someone's at the door.
It's, the
Whole new world.
life we live in. Shall I? While Maggie's away, shall I jump in for?
I think we've got a minute or two. I mean,
Okay.
our planning commission meeting doesn't start. I don't want to make sure she captures your feedback and your comments.
Sure.
I'm actually going to take this time to go ahead and pull up on Google Maps a street view, like an area map. Huh, I never installed Chrome on this computer. So are you back, Commissioner Ostrowski?
I'm sorry?
Are you available to resume? We were
Yes.
actually just holding off.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
So Commissioner Ching, do you have any feedback, comments to add?
Yeah, sure. I live pretty close to Hurst. I live about half a mile away, so I'm pretty familiar with the area. You know, in terms of compatibility with that particular street and neighbouring streets, I think it's fine, and it's type of in keeping with that. And I saw the comments about offsetting it, but that would cause, you know, whether that actually improves the thing or not, I don't know. But I can see the complication that you couldn't use the same foundations, and it would increase the cost and reduce your room size. So I don't think that's really necessary. I like what your suggestions were on having the vertical and horizontal stripping. I think that adds a little bit to it, so I'd be in favour of keeping that. My only other comment would be, have the applicants spoken to the neighbours or received any feedback from the neighbours?
We have,
Yeah.
both sides.
Yeah.
We're fairly familiar with them. We've talked to them, and there's been no problem.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, that was my question too.
Yeah.
I'll also add, we do a 300-foot notice for these properties when an application is initially received. We'll do another notice when we go to Planning Commission, but to date, I haven't received any comments on the project.
Yeah, one of the neighbors actually asked if we wanted her to submit a letter telling you that she supported it. I said, well, we haven't really gotten to that point yet, but they think that we've tried very hard to be respectful of their space as well as our space. So there's been no problem at all.
Sure. Yeah, great.
So how does the neighbor that's right adjacent to where the addition would be, what are their feelings on it?
It's really no problem whatsoever. I mean, in the sense that it's really not doing anything per se, because there's no window currently, and there won't be a window in the future. They're a one-story building, so it's not like all of a sudden they're now going to look out to something adjacent. It's really no impact per se. And they are south-facing, we are north-facing, so it's not as if we are preventing any, you know, sunlight or anything from coming in.
Yeah, and I'll also add that the design guidelines for single-family additions do speak to this whole idea of two opposing windows. So if the home to the south did have a second-story window and we're adding this addition and that we're causing an interface, maybe one of the solutions we'd have is by not adding a window to the south facade of the building. This home's not even doing it now, even though there isn't a second story.
Correct.
That's usually something we would be looking towards as a solution, but there isn't even a problem and we're solving it in that particular case.
Yeah, I mean, my personal feeling is that the design does look quite boxy and massive, which is something we talk a lot about, Stephen, sorry, in terms of having the articulation and minimizing the boxy look of homes. So, I mean, I understand what Commissioner Ching is saying about the fact that making that adjustment would create a financial situation, but is there anything that can be done architecturally that would make it look less boxy?
Just one of the suggestions would be offsetting either the front wall or the side wall. Both of those elements add a little bit of depth to the building. So we do have that exhibit. It's just a quick mock-up. I just took their existing drawings and I just photoshopped them briefly, show what that might look like. If I may, I'll actually share my screen again here just for 1 second. I want to highlight what the kind of the overall feel of some of the homes in the neighborhood are. So this is the subject property, 1789 Hearst. And as we talked about, there is this additional home just right down the street. I mean, these are kind of the homes in the area. I mean, this is the corner lot. It's a large 2-story kind of rectangular, more boxy. Not to say that just because this is the way that they did homes in the past is the way that we should continue doing it in the future. But the neighborhood is more or less characterized by a lot of these 2-story, solid, boxier looking buildings. And as you go down the street, you find more and more examples of the same. There's actually 2 of these homes I was actually gonna jump to. This one here at Montemar. I mean, again, it depends on which part of the neighborhood you're looking at, but oftentimes they'll have like a chimney element or a portion of the home which has certain vertical siding. There are different ways of introducing materials or other types of articulation at break. But again, that type of change, you would almost need to impart all the way around the building. You wouldn't want to occur only on one facade, not on another, otherwise you're gonna create this asymmetrical look. I just want to mention that as well.
I think it's quite a good point Stephen makes actually, because it's up on my running stroke staggering route. So the houses in that area, as Stephen points out, are pretty boxy. So that's why I think it would be much more of an issue if it was in another area, but this type of rectangular shape fits in this type of cohesive with the other houses in those streets. And I walked past this morning, I can't remember why, but I couldn't really see the impact from the road, right? It is probably less impactful when you actually see it, when it's see the house than those drawings do. I think it probably accentuates it in the drawings more than it would be in real life.
Because of the setback.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like you're sitting this one big box of the whole house. There is that entire, it's really the whole second floor is kind of separate, if you will, from the first floor.
That's it.
There is that articulation. It's just top to bottom.
Yeah, and it doesn't, in the elevation, that doesn't really jump out being just 2-dimensional, but when you actually see it, I think you said nicely. I think that, and the garages come out as well. So I think that helps.
Well, it does seem like, kind of within the neighborhood, it's maybe on the edge, but it's not a large change from the character of that neighborhood.
Correct.
Where is the balcony actually?
In the back.
So
So
it's facing the
the
backyard?
neighbor who is a Campbell neighbor would gain additional privacy because right now we have the balcony and we can look right into his swimming pool and into his backyard. So by taking away the balcony, he gains the privacy.
Oh,
There's another balcony on the front, but the one that we're taking out is on the back.
Yeah, but it's not on the side, it's on the back.
No.
None whatsoever.
It's on the back.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think, at the Planning Commission, I think we'll have to discuss the increase in the floor area ratio because we generally have a pretty lengthy discussion when it comes to that. That would be my only concern. We also have concerns about setting precedents for things. So I think that'll have to be discussed in a larger type of setting. I think the look, I'm okay with the look for that neighborhood. What's your feeling about the size and the FAR, Commissioner Ching?
Yeah, you raise a good point, and always concerned about setting precedences. I think if Stephen, could you pull up the report, please, where you mentioned the two findings that we should be thinking about in agreeing the FAR addition, please.
Sorry about that. I was muted. So these are the two findings which are in relation to the requested increase in Floria ratio. Now, these are different. I mean, oftentimes we're looking at variance findings. We're looking at a project in a planned development zone. These are uncommon. I don't think the planning commission, the current commission, has seen these in a while. And they really relate to the perceived scale and mass of the home is compatible with adjacent homes and homes in the surrounding area. So this would be one of the bigger homes on the block if this addition were to be approved. How much bigger, noticeably larger? Are we talking about a 5,000 square foot monster next to a 1,000 square foot neighborhood? Maybe not so much. The second finding is the home minimizes the use of design features that make it significantly larger than adjacent homes and homes in the surrounding area. So it's really getting about the architectural design. So these are things like if you had a building that had really tall 1 to 2 story vertical windows, or you had a very grand entryway, things that were drawing attention to the mass and the size of the home. That's really what that second finding is getting at. So this particular home, if you're looking at it from the street, and I can actually go back to street view here, it has these hipped roofs that face towards the street. So you're not looking at the opposing gable end of the building, which minimizes the kind of the bulk and mass of the home dramatically from the home. If in fact, if you look at its counterpart, so these are the two homes that have the similar appearance, there's two across. Look at the difference between this garage element and the second story in opposition to its flipped neighbor. That garage, that gable end, makes this home look more massive as a result of that type of design feature. Even though they actually have the same, and even with this addition, this home will be smaller. But the question is, if you're at the street and you're walking by the home, will that garage feature, for instance, on this home, which is close to the street, it's the prominent design feature, draw more attention than the mass and bulk of the home than say this tinier 280 some odd square foot addition that's more than 40 feet back from the street. That's kind of what that second finding is getting at. So I'm gonna leave up these findings for you two to discuss, but that was the nutshell.
So in terms of a precedent though, are you suggesting that there would be no precedent because outside of an area plan that these findings need to be met, and then the intent of this language was to allow homes that meet the findings?
I will add that the bar is much lower than those for a variance. So the variance, we recently had the project regarding the accessory dwelling unit on Reading Road, and we kept talking about precedent. Will this project, is it a grant of special privilege? Is this something that's, are there unique or unusual characteristics to this home and not others? These aren't the findings for that. These are different findings. They are more permissive. The bar is lower, but absolutely you could see a precedent being set. I mean, I wouldn't want to be the commissioner who say voted to approve this addition and then wanted to deny that the matchy home to the left. You can imagine that the home to the left, it has almost an identical floor plan, an identical appearance. What is the distinguishing factor? Why wouldn't you grant that home's request? And why would you grant it for this one? Something like that garage element, the fact that you have a hipped element, it's long and horizontal design massing that diminishes the look of the appearance from the street. The other homes in the area are boxy. These are findings which we could add to support the decision, if that's what I'm hearing the commission picking up on. But those are ways that you could differentiate this project from the very next project that could be coming in. But yes, there could be a precedent set by any project.
We had one in downtown, right? It was a small lot and they wanted to go above the FAR. This was like a year or a year and a
That's
half.
right, I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, so that particular project was 250 grant. So it's just right kitty corner to City Hall. It was a tiny little postage stamp size of a lot. And we spent a lot of time looking at the neighborhood character. How big was this home? There's two different ways. We were looking at two different ways of balancing Floria ratio. Is it more important for the home to look similar to other homes on the block and in the neighborhood? Meaning we were going to grant it an increase in Floria ratio so it looked in proportion to the other homes, or should that home project be in proportion to the lot, right? There's two fundamental schools of thought there. But that was a little bit of a different situation because you had a lot that was 70, 80% smaller than all the other homes on the block. And so should the home be 70 to 80% smaller than the homes, or will that make it not look right when you're driving down the street? So again, just in terms of meeting management, we do have the Planning Commission meeting at 7:30. I do want to provide enough time for to hear all of your comments. I think if we were to go, I don't know how much time you guys want as a buffer, but up to say 7:15 or 7:20 at the latest.
Yep, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Did the applicants have any comments?
Okay, we're up. We appreciate you guys taking the time tonight. We're not architects, but we've spent a lot of time walking around the neighborhood and really trying to get, what's the look and feel. We love the neighborhood. We want to be a part of it. We just are trying to enhance our home to live more inside of it and make it more comfortable, in 2020, as opposed to the long time ago that it was built. Quite frankly, we're not asking for a whole heck of a lot. It's not like we're looking to build a McMansion on a teeny tiny lot. We're just looking for a little bit more space, and unfortunately just a little bit more than what we are allotted, so to speak. So we're hopeful that you'll take that into consideration, that the time and effort that we've spent trying very hard to kind of be a part of the community, even with this small amount of exception that we're asking for. I don't know if you want to add more.
I think that's it. And I appreciate going back and forth with Stephen, that he's gotten good feedback over the last several months and with the pandemic and on and off. So appreciate
Yeah, definitely.
the feedback that he's provided.
I'll also add one more point just from their written statement, was that part of the reason why they want to fill in the whole second floor as opposed to a portion of it is it's economical. It's more cost effective to stack walls than it is to do an offset. Every time you do an angle and corner, you're adding on costs. So that was one other point that was raised.
Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it would probably look a bit better if it was offset, but is it worth the extra cost and complexity? I don't know, right? That's why I think I'm happy with the way it's being presented, and the two findings for the FAR extension beyond the normal FAR. I think in my mind, right, I think they're okay, right? The findings are type of evident.
Yeah, and especially in light of the rest of the neighborhood and the other two-story unarticulated homes.
Yeah.
So if I could add, if it would be helpful for either the SARC members, if as part of the Planning Commission report, as staff, we were to provide additional analysis of the neighborhood. You wanted us to provide an analysis of the size of homes, say on the block, left and right of the home, 3 to the left, 4 to the left, 4 to the right, and know what this home, where it falls into that mix, or anything else that you'd like us to add. We can do that.
I think what kind of a map showing some examples of similar homes that are 2 stories and unarticulated, like what you showed in the packet, would be helpful, and a map of where they are.
Okay.
Could also include the kind of an assessment of the FAR for some of those homes as well, just to show that they're not, that this isn't totally out of scale or out of range relative to the FAR of the other homes. I mean, I know that the lot is smaller, so that's gonna swing it towards higher FAR, but I think we can take all of that into account together.
Okay, that's good feedback.
I think the photographs is a good idea just for contextually, because when you look at the sketches here, you don't get, excuse me, the setback, the depth. By actually seeing photographs, like, oh, I get it. You have this garage in front versus the one that you mentioned 2 doors down. So actually photographs is a good way, I think, to present it as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
It says a lot that the elevation, plain elevation doesn't really show.
Well, and it also puts it in context with the other homes that are really also unarticulated in the front, like the old kind of colonial style homes with the big pillars that really are much more boxy.
Exactly.
Good, yeah, that's a good perspective.
Okay, I'll definitely be sure to add that to the packet. I did notice that the architect, Mr. Schaefer, did join a little bit late. I think just in terms of our meeting time, unless you have anything. I'm not sure how much of the meeting you were able to catch, because I only caught that you joined a minute ago. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Sorry, I'm technology challenged. Took me a little while to get this far. Okay.
Different.
I had the same problem a few weeks ago.
We can catch
him up.
Dennis.
We'll call him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, well, sounds great, guys. I have plenty of good feedback as staff, and I've got enough to take us to, and with the 2 commissioners' permission, I'll bring it forward to Planning Commission. So.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yep, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey, Ryan, it looks like we need to end this meeting in order for the planning commission meeting to begin. Can you go ahead and close?
Oh,
And-
okay. Looks like it's the same meeting. But okay, let me. Okay, I'm gonna end this.
Great, thank you.